It is knife review time on the Apostle P channel. Today we're going to look at a zero tolerance, and it's a positive review. Bet you didn't see that one coming. Stay with me, guys. We'll talk about it. Hi gang, Rob here. It's the afternoon of 10 March 2014. And we do have a knife review for you today. It is a zero tolerance knife, and it's going to be a positive review. The knife we're looking at today is the ZT0301. I believe they made this knife three ways. The 301, this knife, with the olive drab G10 show side scale, and then the 302 with the tan, and there might have been like a 300 in black. You guys are going to have to weigh in the comments, tell me if that's true, if my memory serves me correctly. So the 300 series, I believe, were some of the very first folding knives that Kershaw Kai made under the zero tolerance nameplate. You know, the sort of Lexus of Kershaw, if you will, the upmarket brand of Kai cutlery. In those days, the ZT brand was really marketed as the hard use, heavy duty, military operator line of cutlery for Kershaw. This first bunch, a joint design effort, I believe, between Ken Onion, whose influence is pretty obvious, and a little bit of Mick Strider, I think, in the handle, if memory serves. This one on the channel for sharpening, courtesy of my friend Richard. His knives are in that sale video I also did today. He's got a nice double beaded lanyard. I'm sorry, just a single beaded lanyard on this one. Nicely done. This out of his personal collection. This is the one he's keeping. In my mind, and it's kind of a sad observation, I think, this first bunch of folders from ZT, still the best. Maybe not the most up-to-date and current in design and styling, but I still think they're built the best. And their price point would bear that out as well. We'll get to that. Let's talk specifics, specifications, and dimensions on this knife. And that's a little bit of a puzzler, because what's published and what I measured are really not the same thing. The specs say from Kai that we have a blade length of 3.75 inches. I measure it at 3 9/16 or 3.56. Now I'm measuring from the farthest point of the handle to the tip of the blade. But this is one of those knives that almost has more cutting edge than it has blade length. Perhaps if you measured from this point here, the back of the cutting edge, to the tip, you might actually get the 3.75 inch dimension that ZT publishes. But I measure at 3.56. Handle length, ZT will tell us that it is 5.25 inches. It is not. It is 5.06 inches. Overall length, they get correct at 8.62 inches. So, pretty much the blade length plus the handle length have to equal overall length. If it's different than that, they're measuring the blade length in some kind of funny way. So they are. Blade thickness, stock thickness, is 0.156 inches. And the handle thickness is 0.62, about 5/8 of an inch thick. Now we get to the weight. You ready for this, guys? On this titanium frame lock 3 9/16 inch bladed tactical knife. Better bring the big boy pants. Better eat your Wheaties if you're going to carry this thing around. 8.2 ounces, half a pound of G10 steel and titanium. Frankly, though, it doesn't feel that heavy. Great balance point right in the finger choil. It really handles well for its weight, I gotta say. Blade material on this knife is the good old days. CPM S30V. Don't we wish that ZT would just make knives out of S30V and call it good? I do. Let's see, handle material, as I said, 6AL 4V titanium, appears to be sort of a hard anodized coat in black, and then the show side, as I said, the beautiful 3D machined and textured olive drab G10. The clip, again, we go back to the good old days, don't we? The old bent butter knife Kershaw clip. Nothing pretty to look at, but my goodness does it work well. And it is sort of Parkerized coated, and it is mountable in all 4 locations: tip up, tip down, left or right hand. Of course, Richard mounts his in the correct location, tip up, left-handed. And you know what? Thank you, Kershaw and Zero Tolerance, for giving us lefties some love. The pivot on this knife is pretty interesting. It's got Kershaw and ZT's standard hex end pivot, but it's, well, the hex is standard, the construction is not. As you can see, we've got this 3/8 inch nut on the other end, which makes the pivot not female, it is male threaded. And instead of a screw going down in the middle of it, we have this nut going around the edge. Supposedly for quick adjustment in the field. I've got more, I guess my Torx tools are handier than my open end wrenches are, or box end wrenches are. Anyway, it does work rather well. The post is very finely threaded, which gives you very precise adjustment capability with this nut. The post pivot is very well constructed. The way the knife goes together, the very end of it, where the top washer and this top scale go on, has a D cut in it because the washer has to be oriented in a specific way, and I'll get to why in just a moment, but really, really well machined pivot. The suspension system for this knife are phosphor bronze washers. Whoops, sorry, I bumped the tripod. And much better phosphor bronze washers than we've seen in other recent offerings that have ZT's SpeedSafe technology, which this does. In fact, I'm going to pause right now and roll in a still that I took of this knife disassembled, and it's going to look much different to you than other current Kershaw and ZT SpeedSafe knives. So here, take a look, guys, and then we'll come back and talk about it. Okay, did you notice anything different there? I sure did. The main thing is, most ZT Kershaw knives that have SpeedSafe technology feature a really tiny washer over here on the, or I'm sorry, a large washer here on the lock bar side. And then because the far side, or in this case the G10 side, houses the torsion bar, normally instead of having that big large washer, they just have that center section, a little tiny washer, so that where the detent ball in the lock bar is way outside the diameter of the washer. So as the knife rotates open and closed, it's cantilevered. The forces from that detent ball are cantilevered outside the diameter of the washer, pushing the blade in this direction, which makes a very unstable pivot suspension system. Because this one has that big huge washer that actually goes outside the slot for the torsion bar, we get great support. That washer extends clear past where the detent ball rides, much like a Sebenza. So we have a very stable blade as it travels through its arc. Consequently, blade centering is freaking awesome. I never can show that well in the camera, but it's right on the money, guys. And it's going to stay there because of the way that pivot's constructed. As I said, it is SpeedSafe, spring assisted, and that's the other thing you should have noticed from that still. Did you see the size of that torsion bar? You're not going to be sending your ZT0301 back to Kershaw to get a torsion bar replaced. The wire diameter for that torsion bar is huge, and the bends in it have very nice gradual radiuses, no sharp inside corners, no tooling marks from bending equipment. They're just not going to break. If they do, I'd be surprised. Deployment is by one of two ways, either by flipper, and this is a big heavy blade, so it doesn't seem like it comes out real fast. It actually, I think, looks faster on camera than it does in person. Or you can use the thumb studs, and I'm going to use the left one because it's, well, I guess it's really not any less accessible, but I'm a lefty. Knife's actually faster by thumb stud. I am getting just a touch of lock stick in this one, but it's very slight, and I think it's just from reassembly oil that I used in it after cleaning. Because I don't think it really had any stick when I took it apart, but it's barely there. You can just hear it a little bit. You can feel it a little bit. It's almost that kind of stick that's comforting because you know the lock bar's not going anywhere. Okay, now, so from a construction standpoint, as you can tell, although I'm not a big spring assist fan, this knife is built very, very well. For what it is just, this is the best example of what Kershaw and ZT are capable of. Even the hardware on this knife is well made. I didn't feel one fastener that felt like it was going to strip or twist or any fragile heads or anything. They're just, where have they gone wrong in the last couple of years? Because the last few zero tolerances that I've had either in my possession as an owner or in for sharpening, that's where they fall down, is in that hardware quality. This one is just great. The knife's just built like a bank vault. It really is. So now, after having stated that, because I kind of owe it to Zero Tolerance, when they do something right in that regard, I owe it to them to mention it, because I've sure been on their case for getting it wrong. Now let's talk about the design of the knife and how it actually performs. As you guys know, I am not a huge fan of recurves. For most of the cutting tasks that we use a knife for in everyday carry, cutting cardboard, paper, fibrous materials that are sort of limp, material tends to gather in that recurve in a draw cut, and we bunch up. Unless it cuts clean, which it doesn't always do, it bunches up right as that recurve area starts to come to the belly. So, are they the best cutters in the world? I don't think so. But having stabbed a bad guy and pushed down and ripped out, are we going to do more damage with that recurve and that dropped belly? You bet we will. I'm also not a huge fan of blades this broad. I think as we're slicing through material, especially cardboard, any variation in the angle at which we hold that blade is going to make it hang up. So we don't want a knife that's super thin that requires us to make a super steep angle down to the cutting edge if we're using any kind of robust stock. So it needs to be broad enough for that main bevel to be gradual. But this is kind of overly broad in my estimation. Even to do a paper cut test, you got to have the angle of that blade exactly in that in the line that you're cutting. And that's going to be true for lots of EDC tasks as well. This sort of modified spear point shape makes it a great piercing knife. If you're in a saber grip, that point is so straight ahead. And it's not overly thick. It's strong enough to be a great field knife, I think, but not overly thick to inhibit its piercing ability. Not too bad for fine tasks either. The finish on this blade, I think Kershaw will tell us that it's DLC or diamond-like carbon in a tiger stripe pattern. I don't know that it's real DLC. It does seem to hold up pretty well though, I gotta say. If you look at the edges where my polished edge is, the edges of the coating are real nice and crisp. They didn't seem to polish away and feather like Benchmade's BK1 coating does. Should be a very durable coating. Let's talk about ergonomics for a minute. You just get a great grip on this knife no matter how you hold it. You know, from the shape of the handle to the way the jimping is designed to the 3D machine texture on both sides of the knife. You can't hold this knife in a grip that slips. It's really pretty darn impressive. The saber grip is super comfortable. I don't know about, you know, the way that the spine drops down after the thumb ramp. It kind of looks like it wants to be a thumb rest for a choke-up grip. I think it might be nice if they just did a hinderer-like forward finger choil just to let us do that, and that would, of course, minimize that recurve, which would be no great heartbreak to me. I think the knife would really do well in that grip, but right now that cutting edge is touching my finger. I'd like to have that grip available. Okay, so what about the hammer grip? Very hand-filling. I am getting, it's kind of an odd hot spot down there in my ring finger and pinky. Not sure. I guess that's from the cutout for the lock bar. I understand why they do that on the outside for ultimate strength. If you think about the forces down that lock bar, you want them to be, you want this not to be broken on the inside edge for ultimate strength. Not sure it's needed, but that I do feel that cutout. In a pinch grip, I'm not sure you're ever going to grip this knife like that. It's just not comfortable. Not much of an EDC knife anyway. So now let's get my lanyard out of the way here and look at the reverse grip. And again, another grip where this knife really excels. Very comfortable. Positive index point for the thumb. Super secure. Just can't fault it ergonomically for what it is. Let's look at some competitive offerings, shall we? Let's call this knife what it is. This is sort of the foundational folder for zero tolerance. A portion of all the proceeds for new ZT sales went to the Paralyzed Veterans Association, an organization that was Ken Onion's baby, his featured charity. So what knife, for $200 or so, production knife, American knife, sort of dedicated to military guys, could we choose? Well, I got an idea. How about this knife? Benchmade 275 Ergonomics. These knives can be had in today's market for, $130 to $150. So priced a little bit less than the 301. S30V steel versus D2. I could take either one. You can make the case that S30V is more expensive. Is it better? I don't know. Not to me, it's not. Blade lengths for these two knives. I'm trying to be fair here, but the Ergonomics clearly has a bit of an advantage, and I think it's about 3/16 of an inch in blade length. However, that doesn't translate to cutting edge, does it? Blade is longer on the Ergonomics, but cutting edge is longer on the 301. Construction, obviously titanium frame lock here, super beefy axis lock here. I guess most of you who are watching this video are going to say that you prefer a titanium frame lock. I, however, do not. I can take it, or I can take either one, but I am kind of an axis lock lover. Big heavy blades, both of them. Let's do another one of those little tests we like to do, shall we? Make sure I don't run into each other. Spring assisted knife, big heavy D2 manual knife. Okay, ready? Yeah, I think the Kershaw won. The ZT won. Let's try it again. You guys can see it better than I can. Ready? Go. Pretty close. I'll tell you what though, this knife needs that spring. Doesn't quite have that buttery, silky smooth action that the Ergonomics has. If this knife's more expensive, it's also heavier. You know, we all think of the Ergonomics as this big old boat anchor of a knife, don't we? What are these, 7.7, 7.8 ounces? 8.2. I think the blade stock's actually a little thicker on the Ergonomics as well. I didn't look up the spec, but maybe they're the same. Anyway, I think they're, you know, two very different ways of skinning a cat, aren't they? Both great knives. Personal preference goes a long way if you're trying to decide between those two. I can't really tell you either one of them's a bad knife. A lot of it is purely subjective. You know, if you're concerned that you're going to be in the field, you might be injured, you might need to deploy a knife when most of your faculties and muscle memory are gone. Is it nice just to be able to touch that flipper and have that big old blade fly out of that handle, or just touch the thumb stud and off to the races? You know, you can make the case that it is. Almost cut myself. Gee, the first time for everything. Yeah. Although I do love this knife, it's not one I would really probably choose for my own collection. I sure do respect it. And it kind of puzzles me. As good as this knife was, what, 4 or 5 years ago when it came out? Maybe longer? Why aren't zero tolerance knives better than this by now? They should be better. They're not. They are still making these though. I wonder if this one cuts. Oh. Shall we find out? I'll tell you one thing. This S30B sure is a lot easier to sharpen than LMAX, as ZT does it. Let's see. Oh yeah. I would say she's sharp. What would you guys say? Well, Richard, if you're watching, this one will be on its way back to you soon. Just thought I'd give you a little preview of what your edge looks like. And for the rest of you, it's got to be kind of nice to see and hear your old buddy Rob. That's one reason I don't like Speed Assist. To see and hear your old buddy Rob kind of giving zero tolerance some props, isn't it? I'm kind of happy about that. And what a good looking thing it is. Let's lay it out here where you can see it. Yummy. Well, grace to you and peace, my friends, from God our Father and the Lord Jesus Christ. And remember the Word and Richard's zero tolerance. ZT0301 are sharp.